All right, episode 13
Ooh,
with
lucky number 13.
that's right, lucky number
Okay.
13 with my guest here, James
Mm,
Corby with EXP Realty
yep.
Alpha Team in New London, Connecticut. And I think quickly, I just to be transparent, this is our third time doing this.
Mm. Third time's a charm. Yeah.
I have had so many issues
Yeah.
podcasting.
Yeah, but let's give it up for Paul Martinez,
Yeah,
guys, huh? Let's
yeah.
give it up for Paul because this is great. And I
This,
think everybody really appreciates the content and loves you. So,
yeah. Again, this isn't supposed to be about me. It's about you.
oh,
It's
okay.
your platform.
Okay.
I had to.
Yeah.
I
A
just
little
had to.
humility. Yeah. Okay.
But concept of my show, of your platform. I think everybody has a story,
Mm,
or I know everybody has a story.
yeah.
I know I have a story,
Yeah.
and we all come from somewhere and some place to achieve X, Y, Z,
Yeah.
and where we are today is because of those stories.
Absolutely.
That's why I came up with your platform, because I want to give people a platform to discuss
Hmm.
that part of their story and then
Yeah.
the current part of the story.
Sure.
So before we do that, we'll talk about the quick introduction of the topics that you had brought to me.
Yeah.
Work-life balance you wanted to discuss, mental health and sales you wanted to
Yeah.
discuss
Yeah.
from a real estate perspective,
Hmm.
new agent burnout,
Hmm.
and then you had mentioned building relationships in real estate.
Yeah.
But before we go into that, tell me about your story, James. Bring me to where you are today.
Mm,
Go back 10, 15 years, adolescence, high school, college,
yeah.
and fill us in. Fill us in.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had a pretty decent childhood growing up, raised by a single mom and a sister. So, a lot of strong women in my life for my whole life. Had a pretty decent childhood growing up, went to Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven for a few years,
Mhm.
lived out in New Haven for some time, got involved in bartending and kind of living that nightlife style, as an invincible, somebody that felt invincible when they were 19, 20, 21 years old. Right. And I did learn the hard way that you are not invincible and that I'm not invincible, and a lot of trial and error in those that time period of my life.
Yeah.
I can say that there are times I have been in the gutter, many, many years ago, many moons ago. And I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for getting out of it because it helps me keep things in perspective. I think one thing that I always kind of focus on now is balance and keeping things in perspective. And, I am confident when I look myself in the mirror and know that I'm a good man and how I got there, because I've always been a good man, but I think it's, now it's a little bit, almost makes you feel a little bit stronger to an extent, right?
Yeah.
It almost makes you want to sit up a little bit straighter
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But there was definitely some dark periods in my life, for sure. Some bad decisions led to some bad results, right?
Mhm.
And I think now that I'm 33, kind of looking back at everything, my early 20s was definitely um, I'm glad I made it out of my early 20s,
Yeah.
and I think the grace of God is why I made it out of my early 20s.
Mhm.
And I am very grateful for the opportunities that have been presented to me.
Mhm.
The James Corby 12 years ago would have traded anything in the world to be the James Corby sitting here today, right? And
Yeah.
I've always got to remember that, because there are definitely times when work gets a little hard or when you don't get that deal or something happens and you can become ungrateful
Right.
real quickly. And I think that one thing that I do is keep it in perspective and put myself back to where I
Yeah.
was 12, 10 years ago,
Mhm.
and be super grateful,
Yeah.
right, for the opportunities presenting themselves in front of me, right? But
Is that something when you look back?
mm,
Is there any pivotal moment that you look back to, or actually, what pivotal moment you look back to and say, uh, "Man, thank God."
yeah, I mean, that's a great question you're asking. So, I mean, there was a time period there where I was homeless on the streets in New Haven, right?
Mhm.
And I put myself there, right? Bad decisions. And I think that there was a time period where I never would have fathomed kind of having a quote unquote normal life
Mhm.
or anything like that, right? And I think that's a real wake up call, right? When you don't know where you're going to sleep that night, or it's cold outside, or you're riding the New Haven city bus because it's the only warm place to be,
Wow.
right? That's a scary place to be for a white kid from the suburbs that went to a private school, that had a good family growing up, that had God in his life growing up, right? I think that's a wake up call, a wake up moment, a wake the hell up moment, kind
Yeah.
of, if you would, right? And I think it took some. I think one reason why I'm gonna always continue to grow is because I won't forget that,
Mhm.
if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of people know this. There's a couple people close to me that kind of know these things about me, but I try to live to an extent a somewhat private life. Don't get me wrong, I put things on social media and like,
Yeah.
I kind of show my day to day, but things like that from way back, part of me, I guess, boxes it out and compartmentalizes it in a
Mhm.
way. But then I also got to keep peeking in the box
Sure.
to make sure you're super just grateful. I mean, I
Right.
don't know. Like I think that like I can't even explain it, man. Like I am so grateful. Right. And
Yeah.
actually, even this podcast, like right now, talking about it is
Yeah.
making me realize how grateful I
Yeah.
absolutely am for all the opportunities that
Yeah.
are in front of me. And like I said, um, there was a time period where I would have traded anything in the world to be
Yeah.
where I'm sitting at today, right?
Thinking
So,
back to young 20,
mm,
year old James,
mm,
who do you credit most, or who do you look back to and say, man, thank God they were in my life to help me? Because I think, I did a episode with um, Joe Dela Cruz, who is the president of Community Speaks Out over in Groton.
yeah,
Community Speaks Out is a organization that advocates for families that deal with addiction and mental
mm,
health and all that
sure,
stuff.
yeah, yeah,
And he talks about the stigmas in the episode. If you go back, I think it's episode 6. He talks about, like, it's all about breaking the stigma and whatnot.
hmm,
And it was the first time I got to dive into that work of mental illness and
yeah,
addiction and struggle at that capacity where people are homeless, and
yeah,
you know there's a really nasty side of that.
hmm,
um, but there's a support system that
hmm.
comes from that. Is there anybody that you can think of back then, or who can you think of that kind of helped you, or did you kind of just wake up one day and said, "F this, I got to get my stuff together"?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of just start to get to a point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired,
Right.
right? So, I think that honestly, the only person I can really credit that to is myself, right? And kind of getting myself up out of that because nobody's going to want it for me. Nobody's going to do it for me. Don't get me wrong. There are some strong,
Sure.
in my situation, some strong men that I've leaned on along
Hmm.
the way,
Hmm.
and still occasionally lean on, just for like mentorship side of things,
Yeah.
that have definitely kind of helped, because they've already made the mistakes,
Right.
right? Or they've already been through that road that I'm about to travel, that I
Yeah.
had traveled through,
Yeah.
right? So, but I can't necessarily credit like one person or two people or
Hmm.
three people. I think it's a cumulative of myself
Yeah. Yeah.
first, right?
Yeah.
And being like, okay, and believing in myself at a
Right.
time when it's very hard to have hope, right?
Right. Right.
Believing in yourself in a time you don't have hope is like
Yeah.
it's very easy to say
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but then to actually do that
Very difficult.
is extremely difficult, right? God is definitely looked out.
Yeah.
I can say that,
Yeah.
right?
That's I had Rajay Davis on.
Mm, that's a great guest,
Yeah.
huh? That's a
Yeah.
great guest. Yeah,
He was it was an awesome
that's
conversation.
awesome.
And he had mentioned that there was a moment in his career
Mm,
where thought he made the bad decision,
mhm.
but then he said, or was it the right decision?
Right.
Because it had allowed him to step outside the box, if you will,
Yeah.
right? No pun intended,
Perspective. Yeah.
and realize that God allowed me to see this so I
Mhm.
can get where I am today.
Yeah, I mean, I think things still even happen now in like day to day life, right? Like it's
Yeah.
basically like you don't know the reason why something happened.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a reason. You don't know the reason why it happened necessarily when it's happening, but
Mhm.
when you look back at it, you're like, holy
Yeah,
cow,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, wow, like my
yeah.
life could have been there or my
Yeah.
life could have been there. And it could be something so simple,
Right.
right? It could be a work thing.
Right.
It could be changing brokerages, changing
Right.
teams, right? It could be partnering with who you partner with.
Right.
It could be all of these little things that at the time you don't really realize what's going on.
Yeah.
It might be a little stressful,
Yeah.
but I think if you like remain grateful through it,
Right.
and then you can kind of like navigate life on life's terms,
Right.
right? And then look back on it and you say, wow,
Yeah.
and like for me specifically, like I am completely blessed. Like
Yeah.
I really do feel like
Yeah.
that. I feel like God has absolutely looked out for me. Like
Mhm.
I don't need any scientific evidence. Like I am literally the scientific evidence of it,
That's
right?
right.
For
That's right.
myself
That's right.
personally,
Yeah.
right? So, that's it, man. Everything's kind of shaped me.
For sure.
And, a lot of the decisions I make today,
Yeah.
I try to keep things in perspective and
Right.
like other people's perspective and
Right.
and don't get me wrong, there's times I fail at that, and
Yeah.
like I try to surround myself with people that'll help me remind myself of
Mm.
that, right? There are some definitely really strong people that are in my life, and I think that's like probably the most important thing.
Right.
Is like I started surrounding myself with people that are winners and are successful.
Yeah.
And I mean, my close friends, I have like 5 close friends, we've been best friends for 10 years.
Mm.
That's like an impenetrable circle,
Yeah.
right? Like literally, like I can do business with them, like actual business with them. I can move in with them if God forbid if I had to, right? I
Mm.
can raise their kids if I had to. They could raise
Right.
my kid, like whatever it is. It's That's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's super crucial, right? Not surrounding myself with leeches, not
Right.
surrounding myself with, and that goes for anybody, right?
Mhm.
You know, once you kind of start figuring all that stuff out, and listen, man, I might have had some delays in my life
Sure.
due to my own actions, right?
Yeah.
But we got there, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, this is the path.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I think about it all the time. I mean, realistically, yes, we're adults, and
mm,
yes, we have influence.
yeah,
And there's people that come in and out of our life that teach us certain things.
right.
But that was only 15 years ago.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Think about that. 15 years prior to that, you're 1, 2 years old.
Yeah,
We don't learn enough.
right.
I feel like I'm more prepared in life now, more than ever over the last 4 years,
Sure.
than I had been previously.
Hmm.
And it's just, I think it comes up to what you're willing to learn, and like you said, what kind of perspectives are you willing
Yeah,
to
man.
have?
Hmm. And
Um,
growth is uncomfortable, right?
yeah,
Change is uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable, right?
mhm.
Like it's an
Yeah,
uncomfortable
yeah, no, yeah,
process,
yeah,
right?
for sure,
So
for
I
sure.
think if it's easy, it doesn't stick,
No, yeah,
essentially,
right,
right? And some people need it to be a little bit harder,
right,
but that's just my path.
yeah,
Your path is different.
yeah,
Your path is different. We might all start getting to the same area
mhm,
because we've all kind of navigated through our paths,
right,
right?
right. At what point did you decide I didn't want to do this anymore? I want to get into real estate.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I had been working in the restaurant industry for years. You know,
Mm,
I started that back in New Haven. I mean, I was one of the, I think when I was like 15, I was working in like a deli. Like I was
yeah,
always in food service. And the
mhm,
reason why was because I knew that you could make more than minimum wage,
sure,
right?
mm,
You know, in food service,
right,
right?
right,
And I think and that just progressed. And my natural ability to network and meet with people and move up in restaurants or move
mhm,
up to different restaurants or with
yeah,
different restaurant groups definitely helped.
mm,
My work
good,
ethic definitely helped. I
yeah,
mean, had no problem working until 1, 2 o'clock in the
yeah,
morning because the money was good,
right,
right? So I think that natural progression of being really great at hospitality as it was kind of segued into, okay, I don't want to be in the restaurant industry the rest of my life. What can I do now?
right,
And 7 years ago, right, I started thinking, okay, what can I do now?
mhm,
Okay, and I'd seen some big wigs. I'll never forget this full circle moment for me. Right, is Ron Donovan? He's a realtor out in our area, right?
mhm,
Ron Donovan. And I was working at the waterfront in New London. I was bartending and serving there. I worked there like literally 7 days a week, basically.
yeah,
And he would come in, and I remember one time he came in, and I walked up to him. I saw his credit card. I'm like, "Oh, are you Ron Donovan?" I'm like, "I see your signs everywhere,
yeah,
right?" And like that was like one of those moments for me that now later on in life
right,
in my career, I work with Ron all the
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah.
right? And I've told him that, like, "Hey, you're actually one of the reasons why, like,
Love that.
And then I had one of my best friends was very close to Bill Heenan right
Mhm,
at that time, and he made the introduction for me, and things lined up in Bill's timeline
yeah,
that, wow, okay, hey, go take the class and go pass the test, and maybe give me a call,
right,
and we can have a conversation once you do all that stuff,
mhm,
right? And I just did what I needed to do, and I did what I saw other people doing, and
mhm,
I think like natural ability, right, combined with actually doing some work,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
kind of led. I mean, in the beginning, I think I was working 6, 7 days at the restaurant, doing the classes at night. I think even when I first started in real estate for about 3 months, I was doing like
mhm,
nonstop,
mhm,
just because I wanted it. Like I knew, like
right,
once you get a little taste of it,
yeah,
and I think a lot of new agents, once they get a little taste of success, right,
yeah,
like it's almost like a dopamine hit. It's
yeah,
almost like, wow, like I
right,
want more of that, right?
right,
And then you go, and then you go, and then of course we've talked about, a lot of 80% of
y
agents burning out in 2 years, right? Like
yeah,
there's a reason for that, right?
right.
It's because you get that, and then all of a sudden, so I think that after that 2 year point, you're kind of figuring out balance
What
again.
what are some of the hardest parts in that for those first 2 years? I
Mm,
know for me, from the insurance perspective, it's what I learned on the test is completely different
$100%.
than what I'm actually putting out
Right.
in discussing with people.
Hmm.
Um, but there's the networking piece.
Yeah.
I think that was the hardest for me. But what are some from a real estate? How hard was it for you? And what did you do to kind of overcome those?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that the confidence in the beginning, right? Having the confidence in the beginning of everything was definitely something that you struggle with, right? Because you don't have the knowledge, right? So it almost is like you come across as cocky in a way, right? Because you don't really know. It's like that false confidence, right? But then I think then once you start getting the knowledge and you kind of start working through and don't get me wrong, so I did end up working for Bill for a few
Sure.
years. I mean, he was a great mentor to have, right? Like I was like a sponge when it came to that, right? Like he knows what he's doing. He's been doing it for 30 plus
Right.
years, right? I mean, the guy's like a menace when it
Yeah.
comes to that, right? So I think that being surrounded by the right people and learning and absorbing from the right people was something super crucial for me. That the rest of it was just kind of combining that with my already own natural ability.
What was the most valuable thing you think you learned early on?
That knowledge is power, right? And actually learning the knowledge
Yeah.
and being able to walk in and talk to a seller and let them know that you are confident in your numbers and
Mhm.
how did you get to these numbers and showing them how you got to your numbers
Mhm.
and learning maybe it's almost like breadcrumbing in a way,
Mhm.
like dropping some breadcrumbs, to lead them to the result that you want them, that is best for them, that is
Right.
best for everybody involved,
Right.
right? And I think that that's learning that dance is super crucial.
Yeah. How long did it take for you to learn that? Because obviously,
Mhm.
it's probably more than 2 years, right?
Yeah,
I think you're
yeah.
probably still kind of learning
I think
now.
I'm still learning every single day,
Yeah.
right? And I think that when you're not learning and you're not growing, and then that's a dangerous place to be.
Right.
When you walk around thinking like you know everything, I think that's an extremely dangerous place to
Yeah.
be, right?
Right.
So I'll say that I'm still learning, right,
Right.
and I'm still adapting,
Mhm.
but I think it finally started to stick
Yeah.
probably after I don't know, right around year two. I
Mhm.
would say right around that point. I would say it really started to stick when I went off on my own after 2 years from Bill. I joined a Remax office,
Mhm.
and I went off there, and I think that's when I really started to kind of grow into my it's like, okay, I had the foundation.
Mhm.
Now let's start building the walls and building the house.
Right.
Right. Like, and that's kind of how I looked at it.
Right.
It's like, all right, I went to college for 2 years.
Yeah.
I looked at it like that. Like went
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
college with the Bill Heenan team for 2 years.
Right.
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 I learned, right. I made money while I did it too.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Learned and kind of took it and ran with it. But I think that, yeah, like a couple years in,
Yeah.
you're figuring out that balance too, right? Like you're figuring out that burnout balance. You're
Right.
figuring out, wow, it's okay to not answer your phone after 9 o'clock
Right.
sometimes in
Right.
some instances,
Right.
right? Like it's okay to put personal time in your calendar, right? Like it's
Mhm.
okay to prioritize your mental health. Like it's
Right.
okay
Yeah.
to go buy a dog because it makes you feel happy. You don't need to work 24/7, right?
Shout out
Like
to Biggie Smalls.
shout out to Biggie Smalls. Yeah. The best and the brightest. Yeah. 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 Now
For
you
the
make me feel like a dad. I want to like pull out my phone. Like you guys see him,
for those who don't know, Biggie Smalls is his firstborn son.
Yeah. Firstborn son, Boston Terrier, the notorious. Yes.
You know,
Best thing I ever did besides real estate.
yeah.
Best thing I ever did was that dog.
How old is
Absolutely.
he?
He is 3.5.
Three and a
Yeah,
half.
about to turn 4.
Look at that.
Yo, big up. Yeah, that's my guy.
How'd you come up with that name? We'll go back to the stuff. How'd
Oh
you come up with that
man.
name?
So I saw a picture of him before I had my dog.
Uh-huh.
I saw a picture of him and I said, I'm gonna call him Mr. Biggs.
Okay.
That's what I said. I said,
Yeah.
I'm gonna call him Mr. Biggs. He just looks like he was the runt. I
Yeah.
knew he was the runt.
Yeah.
I was like, he just looks like I want to be the like oxymoronic. Like I want to be the
Yeah.
opposite of what he is, right?
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
so I'm gonna call him Big.
Yeah.
And then it went to Mr. Biggs.
Yeah.
And then I said, wait a minute. I said Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G. You've been listening to your whole life.
That's
I
hilarious.
was like, wait a minute. I
Yeah.
go, that how cool would that be if James Corby had a dog named Biggie Smalls?
That's
I
hilarious.
said, nailed it.
Biggie Smalls.
Nailed it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man.
You
That's
know,
fantastic.
before you just segued into that,
Mm.
we were talking. You mentioned work-life balance.
Yeah, for sure. Something I still deal with, right? Like still.
It's hard,
Yeah.
man. It
Yeah.
is so hard, and
Mhm. Mhm.
I'll ask you because you wear all sorts of hats. You know, you're
Yeah.
an owner
Thank you.
of
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
got your
Well, team leader,
yeah,
team leader. Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but you are
Mhm.
a part of the head.
Yeah, for sure.
You have your investment stuff that you got
Yeah.
going on the side.
Yeah, that's been great. I'm really glad I did that. I'm really
You
glad I
know,
got involved in that years ago.
but that's a lot of work, is what it's a
Mhm.
lot of work.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, how can you prioritize
Mhm.
James and then
Mhm.
also put into perspective or put in your priorities for
Mhm.
your real estate, put in your priorities for investment, or does it all work together? Like, walk me through that a little bit, because I'm really interested in that because you to be so wrapped up into
Yeah.
a ton of different things.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do
I
it.
know. And then you have real life happening on top of all
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
So it's just kind of, I don't know. I mean, staying organized is definitely one thing for me because I can kind of get lost if I try to rely on just my brain to remember things, right? So
Mhm.
like using my systems, staying organized, like that's huge for
Right.
me. I think
What's your system?
like whether it be my CRM or my contact
Yeah,
managers,
yeah,
I mean, like going in there and it literally telling me like, hey, you're supposed to call this person today, or hey, you got to call them in 9 days, or
yeah,
like
yeah.
things like actually relying on the systems that are in
So
place.
you're planning this. It pops up and you do it, and
Hmm.
I hit dismiss a lot on my calendar.
Yeah,
You know,
I mean, I do it too.
yeah,
Yeah, I do it
yeah,
too. I mean, like, and I think there's always going to be an extent of me doing that,
right,
right? It's just a matter of how much are you willing to do that, because I'll tell you what, when you don't make the call, right, and you don't do
right.
it, and you see them work with somebody else,
Yeah,
that is not a good
it's
feeling,
not a good thing. There's a
right?
rule. So if you ever read the book Fanatical Prospecting, I think I might have
Okay,
shared it with you
you might
one
have,
or
yeah,
two
yeah,
times
hmm,
before.
sure,
But Fanatical Prospecting, he calls it the rule. the 90-day rule. Anything you
Okay.
do for the next, anything you do in the next 30 days
Yeah.
will impact your next 90
There you
days.
go. Right.
And everything that you don't do will also impact
Right.
your next 90
Mhm.
days.
And that's big in real estate, right? Because real estate's not the check today or tomorrow, right?
Right.
Like it's like literally like you are working today to get paid in 60 days if you're lucky,
Right.
right? You
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
find a month to find a house or a
Yeah.
month to get the house ready for listing, whatever. And
Mhm.
I think I think all realtors should honestly read that book. I haven't even read the book.
It's a great
Now I sound
book.
like I need to read that
No,
book.
it's a great book. Whether you,
Yeah.
Jeb Blount, he
Mhm.
has a bunch of good sales
Yeah.
content out there.
Another good one is Weldon Long. I told you, The Power of Consistency.
Mm,
That's a huge one. It's all about being consistent in the little things that
yeah,
build up to.
it's like Atomic Habits. With James Clear, he talks
Yeah,
a little bit about
exactly.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
But with work life balance,
Hmm.
someone who struggles with the imbalance, if you
Yeah,
will, right?
sure.
Um, what steps do you think? I'm asking you for me, right? What
Yeah.
steps do you think I could take to help settle with some of that imbalance?
Yeah. So, all right. So think of it like this, right? If you have like a weighted scale
Mm,
here, right? And you're trying to balance these things out, right? Like you have a bunch of work stuff here, right? Whether
mm,
it's investments, insurance, and,
right,
real estate, whatever
right,
it is, like that's weighing it down here. So now how are you going to get this side
yeah,
to weigh a little bit more so
yeah,
it kind of balances out, right? So what you're going to put in this cup is you're going to put some, whether it's spirituality for me, like for
yeah,
me, it's
yeah,
spirituality,
yeah,
right? For me, it's my close network of friends,
yep,
right? Who double as my therapist.
right,
Shout out Anthony Speragna. Like
yep,
he literally doubles as my
yeah,
therapist,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And my business partner on the house flipping,
right,
right?
right,
Like
right,
that. For me, it's my dog. For me, it's my family. For
yeah,
me, it's some personal time, like to watch the game, to play a video
mm,
game,
yeah,
to
yeah,
read a
yeah.
book, to like do these things, to go fishing, to go snowboarding,
I
to
love that. I
to
think what you
mhm.
just it just came to me a little bit here
Yeah.
is there's a level of energy in the
Yeah.
stuff that you prioritize for
Right.
yourself because what work does,
Mhm.
it sucks the energy out of you.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
don't mean that in a negative way,
Right.
right? It's like
Right.
it's like a car.
Right. But without work, you won't have the money to
Correct.
do the things you need to do.
Correct.
Right. Mhm.
Correct. It's like a car
Yeah.
where you drive it and you burn the gas, and once you
Yeah.
get down to 25 miles, it starts letting you know. And I
Uh huh.
love that analogy that you just said
Yeah.
is
Right.
you have it on a scale,
Hmm.
and the things that you mentioned first
Hmm.
were the things that fill you up, that fill your
Right.
cup.
Right.
And I think that just in this conversation is what I'm learning, because again, I struggle with that. The balance. What do I
Yeah.
prioritize? Is
Sure. Sure.
I prioritize work so much
Hmm.
that I believe that it might be draining that side
Hmm.
to empty. Where it's like,
Because it very well could be.
yeah,
Right. It
yeah,
very well could be. I mean, I think that I feel like you to be really successful, right? You have some level of like an addictive personality,
yeah,
right? And I think now it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
for
kind of
sure,
harnessing it
for sure.
and like, and how do you harness it? Okay,
Right.
well, I harness it by doing this and by doing this and by doing this. And, I mean, I don't know, man. It's like, that's super important to me is that balance. Like that is, yeah, that is like, I visualize that. I'm very
Right.
visual. Like
Right.
I visualize in my brain, like, this and that.
This industry
Mm.
is it's a hustle and bustle industry, right?
Yeah,
You got to
absolutely.
run.
Yeah. Adapt or die. Yeah.
And there's some pivotal changes that are going to be
Sure.
happening here,
Hmm.
relatively soon, probably what
Yeah.
Q3.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you see that
Midsummer and
impacting?
summer. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you see that impacting that mindset? Right,
Hmm.
the of man, I'm either going to have to work 10 times more for less.
Yeah.
Is that something that you foresee being an issue, or what kind of issues you see coming up, or maybe what kind of opportunities do you think might come from it?
Yeah. I think we're definitely all going to have to work harder for probably less pay in some instances.
Yeah.
Right. I think that it's going to weed a lot of the week out.
Hmm.
Right. I do think it's an adapt or die period.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's going back to the basics.
Right.
Right. And going back to your negotiation skills
Sure.
and things of that nature, maybe targeting your marketing a little bit differently,
Mhm.
maybe it's adapting, right?
Mhm.
I'm not going to give you guys all the secrets here, right? If you want the secrets, join the alpha team of EXP Realty with me and Christopher Tremont.
Shout out
But,
to James and Chris.
but that being said, I think it's definitely a changing time. And I think that it's going to go back to hard work,
Yeah.
right? Hard
Yeah.
work and adaptation will lead to hopefully the success,
Right.
right? I mean, I think that's the formula.
I think unfortunately for certain people, they joined when it was hot,
Yeah, that's very true.
and not
Right.
just again not real estate, insurance
Mhm.
too.
Yeah.
I know that there was a lot
Yeah.
of
The
people.
industry. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I guess that's all kind of the same
Yeah.
industry,
Right.
right? They came in when it was hot, but that
Mhm.
they didn't experience
The low.
the low.
Yeah.
I joined in 2015, which was
Mhm.
by definition they classified it as a hard market, which
Okay.
is what we're in right now.
Sure,
You're
right.
probably seeing it,
Yeah.
with certain buyers and sellers that
Mhm.
or mainly buyers that have issues with homeowners insurances.
Mhm.
or not. Um, but I forget who says. I want to say it might be Patrick Bet David. It's when it comes to your harvest,
Hmm.
that was a harvest in the winter.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I think that if people can sit through some of those pain points, they'll
Yeah.
be okay.
Hmm.
But people, like I said, people joined when things were hot, and I think there's a little bit of a false.
Sense of,
And I don't mean this for the hardworking agents out there.
yeah.
And I don't mean this towards anybody.
Yeah. Right.
It's just
It's just an
it's an
observation. It's an
observation.
observation. Yeah. Yeah.
It very much. I mean, 60,000 realtors left the industry last year,
Right.
right?
Right. And
Why?
probably another 40 will leave soon too.
Right, and you
Right.
call it 50 and call it 50%
Hmm.
retired, and 50% said this isn't for me.
Hmm. Sure.
Um,
I mean, the amount of realtors that are just 1 or 2 deals a year, too, in our Connecticut MLS is
mhm,
quite substantial. And I don't know the exact number, so I'm not going to spit it out, but I
yeah,
know it's up there.
right,
Right? Like I know it's a large number
yeah,
of just 1 or 2 deals a year.
yeah,
I think the part timers are going to phase out.
yeah,
If you really want my honest opinion, I
yeah,
think it's going to go and shift to which the successful agents, pardon me, the successful agents have been saying this for a while
mhm,
to their buyers and to their sellers: work with a full-time realtor.
yeah,
Right? That's what
yeah,
they've been saying. I
right,
think now more than ever, when these times happen and these
mhm,
times change, that's going to reign true.
right,
Right? It's
right,
because it's going to weed out the part-timers. It's going to, we know how to adapt. We're in the business 24/7. We network. We have a team. We have a conglomerate.
mhm,
We don't have a team just to say we have a team of
right,
agents, right? We have a team so that we can adapt and learn
yeah,
all of the 50 clients he's working with, the
mhm,
50 clients I'm working with, the
yeah,
50 clients she's working with, and we can all pull
yeah,
together and go, hey, we experienced this, we experienced
mhm,
that, we're changing here, we're doing this. Hey, try this new method. Hey,
mhm,
try this. Like that's the whole point of this conglomerate.
mhm,
That's why we started this little
yeah,
office here,
right,
is
right,
this exact reason,
right,
right? So I think you're right. I think a lot of agents are probably going to leave the business,
yeah,
but I think the agents that are leaving the business are not the full-time agents or the lifers. I think it's the
right,
agents that were doing this part-time
right,
or maybe joined during COVID
right,
when they just expected their phone to ring.
right,
Right now is not a time where you can, for a while now, you can
right,
just expect your phone to ring, right?
right,
You have to pick up your phone and
yeah,
you have to make your calls and you have to go
yeah,
back to the basics.
mhm,
And I think that if you kind of stick it out and do that and maybe find some other avenues. Like I got into house flipping
mhm,
so I could do a couple things. One is I
sure,
can create my own listings. I can create my own marketing material. I can get my own buyers for my own listings,
nice,
right? I am the seller, so
yeah,
I
yeah,
can control that. And
nice,
then I can also learn everything and anything about
right,
a house,
right,
right? You really learn about a house when you rip a wall open and
yeah,
you're in there
yeah,
demoing a
yeah.
kitchen with your
I love
guys,
the
right?
content that you put out. I
Yeah.
love the
And I
content.
get that feedback. And, I didn't realize the positive effect that was having to the viewer, right? And I think that I've had a couple other people like yourself come up to me, from Ryan Hartman from Anchor Home Inspections, a couple other people, my attorney, right?
Mhm.
Like, wow, I really love that content. Keep putting that
Yeah,
out
yeah,
there,
it's cool
right?
stuff.
And it's like it makes you feel good. It's like, wow, I
Yeah,
didn't even think. I was just grabbing my phone,
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's definitely I'm very like that's one of the reasons why I segued kind of into
yeah.
that side of it, right?
Yeah. I think we kind of bounced around.
Yeah,
I wanted to
yeah.
read it. It's
I
okay.
ping pong.
It's
I
okay. No,
ping
no,
pong. Yeah,
it's not your fault. I just I have a lot of ideas that I
yeah,
want to talk about. It's a lot of stuff that I want to learn.
yeah.
One thing to the mental health, and I think it's
Mm,
just in sales.
mm-hmm,
You know, kind of goes. The new we talked about the new agent burnout,
mm-hmm.
work life balance.
Yeah.
I think that all aids and funnels into the mental health. But I read this the other day, and I'll read it off here quickly to you. Real estate agents often face unique stressors. A 2014 study found that the real estate industry has the second highest rate of clinical diagnosed depression among professionals. The nature of the job, dealing with emotional clients and external events beyond agents' contributes to this stress.
Yeah, I believe that fully. Yeah.
What can we do about that, do you think? Because
Oh.
I see trainings out there. I see
Mhm.
people post trainings and stuff,
Yeah.
and usually it seems like you know salesy, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
dial, convert, do this, do
Right.
that. How often are mental health aspects put into the sales aspect of what we do?
Yeah, probably not enough,
Yeah,
right? But what I will say is I bet you that happens and there's a lot of like depression or even quote unquote anxiety when it comes to sales jobs in general,
yeah,
is because if you think about it, right? Like it's like a ebb and
yeah,
flow,
yeah, yeah.
right? And
Right,
if you're gonna be on that surfboard riding these ebb and
yeah,
flows, you don't want to be that guy.
right,
You want or gal. You want to
right,
be the straight line across, right?
right,
And that goes back to consistency and
right.
and that hard work and that power of consistency,
Yeah,
right? Because if you number one, don't count the deal until it's done,
Yeah.
right? Don't count your check until it's in your account,
That's the truth.
right? Don't count the commission itself. Get the transactions and the money will follow,
Mhm.
right? Like those are kind of some of the first things I was ever taught,
Yeah.
right? And I think that that has helped me
Yeah.
because I know some colleagues of mine that I mean, the extreme high they get when they're getting a big deal to the extreme low when that deal falls apart, right?
Mhm.
To the extreme high they get when they're back under to the
Yeah.
extreme low. It's kind of just like if you can compartmentalize it to an extent, right? To
Yeah.
an extent, and
Yeah.
just not count it until it's done,
Right.
and just you're only as good as your last deal, right?
Mhm.
So the second you get that deal under contract, you should have already been hunting for the
Yeah.
other ones, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that consistency will kind of help you weather that depression storm
For
or
sure.
whatever it is, because that's normal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like that's a chemical imbalance.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
about it, your
Yeah.
chemical shooting up, your chemical shooting down, like that's
Yeah.
imbalance, right? And that
Yeah.
causes depression,
For sure.
right? So if you can just kind of stay consistent,
Mhm.
stay focused, stay driven,
Yeah.
and how do you do that? I mean, you use your systems, you use
Yeah.
your calendar, you prioritize, and start doing the same thing
Yeah.
over and over. Like try it for a week,
Yeah.
try it for like literally a week,
Yeah.
try it, then try it for 14 days, then try it for a month.
Right.
And the next thing you know, you're 6 months in or you're a year in and you're wondering why you have 20 deals pending
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
actually
Right.
like,
I think that the consistency piece, I think, it comes.
yeah.
That's
Chris is huge on that. Chris Tremont is huge on that. Right.
how so? What do you mean?
The consistency, like how
He just keeps
powerful.
doing the same thing over and over and
Yeah.
over again, no matter
Yes.
what the result
Yeah.
is,
Just
right?
being consistent on the small
Yeah.
things over and over
Yeah.
and over
Yeah.
and over again.
That's invaluable, man.
Mhm.
I love that. It's funny because I think I want to say over the summer we went bowling.
Okay.
Was it the summer? Over the summer?
You and I, yeah,
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 we said
yeah.
we went bowling,
Mhm.
and I had introduced
I
the.
did not beat you, just for the record. Yeah.
Oh, God. Anyway, I introduced. I think I'm pretty sure it was you. The
Mm.
Jonah Hill documentary,
Yeah.
Stutz,
Stutz.
where he interviews
Sure.
his doctor,
Yeah.
Phil Stutz,
Yeah. His therapist. Yeah.
his
Yeah.
therapist, Phil Stutz.
Yeah.
And Phil Stutz talks about in there the life forces. If there's anywhere, I swear, if I ever become a leader
Mm.
anywhere,
Mhm.
which I'd aspire to be a leader somewhere, whether
Yeah.
it be in insurance.
I think you're already a leader, Paul. You just don't realize it too much yet.
Yeah, thank you. But I would use this method
Yeah.
and then curate it to the specific individual. But the
Mm.
method of the life force is
Mhm.
where he goes, hey, if you're struggling and don't know where to start with your life force,
Yeah.
which is that triangle.
Yeah. The triangle. Boom.
And the triangle at the bottom was your relationship with your body,
Mhm.
right? The middle was the relationship with others,
Yep.
and then the top was the relationship with your higher self,
Right.
whether it be
And
spirituality.
they all have to be flowing.
They all have to be going at
Yeah.
the same time.
Mhm.
But you start with your body. You
Mhm.
start with the physical aspect of it,
Yes.
and that's a model that I think that again, it could be different for everybody, but I
Mhm.
do think that could uh, help sales organizations in a huge way.
Oh, 100%.
In a huge way.
Yeah.
Because the ebbs and flows. Like I've had really good years in selling insurance.
Yeah.
Selling close to $1 million in
Yeah.
insurance.
Yeah.
And that's written premium. Not
Mhm.
commissions, but $1 million
Right.
of written premium
Right.
and whatnot. And I've had some that I've barely scratched $500,000.
Sure. Right.
And that, like you said, that high, that dopamine hit that we get
Yeah. Yeah.
is we don't focus on that life force enough.
Right.
If we could focus on that piece and what you said, what Chris does,
Mhm.
the whole, keep
Yeah.
everything in order, do the small things over and over repetitively.
Yeah.
I think sales teams or organizations would do better from that standpoint.
I mean, I think you're 100% right,
Yeah.
because think about it like this, right? I know even for me personally, the second I started like getting a regimen like in the gym, like everything changed.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a reason why my past mentors in real estate, 50s, 60-year-old people who are still top producers
Yeah.
have some level of the gym or working
Right.
out incorporated in their
They
life.
prioritize it.
Right. And I think because it not only the physical side of it gets you
Right.
where you need to be,
Yep.
right? Energy wise, health wise, whatever, you look great. But a positive side effect of all of that is the mental health side of it. Right. And I feel like I would just go to the gym personally just for the mental health side of it, just because it allows you to just harness.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, think about when we were younger, right? Like,
Right.
why did we go to the gym? Because it
Right.
made us feel good, and we wanted
Right.
to look good in front of
Yeah.
the girls
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff
sure,
like that.
right,
You know what I
right.
mean? It's the
Yes.
same concept.
Yes, it is.
Except it's more of a focus on yourself. How
Mhm.
much do we really care about ourselves? And I
Mhm.
think in my life, when I've looked back, I always felt like there's this just silver bullet that's just going to be like going to make things different, and it's
Right.
not.
No,
It's
it's not.
not. You really
Or
have to
like the
put in
blue or
that
red
work.
pill. It's not, it doesn't work like that.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. I think you look good, feel good though too in sales. Like
Yeah.
for me personally, my personal life has to be a look good, feel good
Right.
personal life for me to transfer over directly into work.
Right.
Like it's just 100% what it is.
100%.
You
And
know.
how early do you get up to do you work? Do you have certain times that you work out, or?
Yeah, no, so I like to go in the morning.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like to go in
Yeah.
the morning.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to go kind of in the middle of the day or later in the day, but I think that if I get it out in the morning, but that I go at the 8 o'clock window because that just works for my schedule.
Yeah.
I can be in the office or
Right.
working by 9:30. In our area, that 9:30 phone calls in the morning
Yeah.
are a good starting time.
Yeah.
I think there are some markets in the country where
Yeah.
you need to be at the gym at 6 so you can be calling
Yeah.
by 8.
Yeah. For sure.
That's a little bit different out
Yeah.
in this way, but
Yeah.
I think for me, getting it off and getting it out of the way in the morning,
Mm.
because A, it gives me a sense of accomplishment, like right off the bat.
Right.
That's number one.
Right.
B, it gets that endorphins going
Yeah.
right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then the rest of my day is set. Like I feel like when I do that, I have energy the rest of the day. I'm
Yeah.
not cold.
Yeah.
Like I'm a skinny guy. Like I'm always cold. I'm not cold. You know what I mean? Like the whole
Yeah.
day,
Yeah.
right? Like I sleep better.
Yeah.
I feel better. I eat better. I look better.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so I just like to get it out the way.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah, for sure.
Talk to me about, I think we're in the business of,
Mm.
we're not in this transactional business, right? We don't.
No, we're in the relationship business.
Correct.
Yeah,
The
man.
relationship
Yes, we
business.
are. Yes. You are too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we do it's
Mhm.
a people relationship business, and
Mhm.
it took me a little while to really understand that.
Yeah,
Um,
ditto, right? Ditto. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Where
But that's a long term versus short term, right? Is that right there? That's the
correct.
career versus the job. If you
Correct.
think about it.
That's 100%
Yeah,
correct.
right.
It's being able to realize not what's happening to me now,
Mhm.
what's going to happen to me in the
Right.
future.
Mhm.
Um, how do you how do you prospect? Do you prospect for, or how do you prospect for new relationships? Is that something that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Not going to share our secrets though, but if you want to join the opportunity of XP Realty, we can definitely help you, Chris. We're going to keep it a secret right now, but there is a lot of prospecting involved.
What about for me, man? This is.
There's a lot of prospecting. I think it starts with this.
Are you telling me I need to get my license and
I
join
think
the
I
Alpha
think you
team?
might. I'll give you space right there. Give you space right. Speaking of that, how do you like the office?
It's beautiful.
It's
Man.
fantastic, right? It's
a
cozy in here,
beautiful
right?
office. Yeah,
It's nice.
It really is.
Yeah, yeah. Hannah and a couple others, Hannah Swanson and a couple others did a really great job designing this place. It's really
That's awesome.
comfortable.
Yeah.
But back to what you were
Well,
saying.
then I get the studio for free then if I join, right?
Yeah, I'll talk to Chris.
Yeah.
Wait, so back to the question.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
How much prospecting?
Prospecting. Yes. I think it starts with picking up the phone. I think that's number one, right? I think it starts with staying organized and picking up the phone. You do that, the rest of it's kind of, if you know what you're doing in this business, the rest of it kind of fits in the right way. But
the challenge is, I think, is when you get in front of that new person.
Yeah.
How do you take it from, hey, let's meet and have coffee?
Yeah.
To
sure.
where we are today? Because for me and you, our situation's a little different, right? Because we didn't meet. We knew each other through phone, and we did business with each other through phone for 5 years before we met in person.
Literally, yeah.
And when we
it's
met,
kind of crazy to say that out loud, right?
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, right.
When we met, it was like, oh yeah, that's Paul.
Right.
We've known each other.
Yeah,
and
right.
And I think who we were with, I think we were Jimmy and Steph.
Might have been golfing. Yeah.
And we were like, yeah, it's our first time meeting. And they're like, what?
They're like, wait, really?
Yeah,
right.
So
yeah.
But what are some of the hardest things taking it from that to where it is? Because you don't want people to be, you don't want to BS people. You don't want people to BS you, because ultimately,
no,
right?
and people don't appreciate that,
Yeah.
right? Like the BS radar goes off, right? And I used to always say you can't bullshit a bullshitter, because you know what I mean. So it's like, I think that just being true and genuine goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, if it's a real estate relationship and it's a newer relationship, if they're asking you a question, don't just babble at them. Like say, hey, let me get you the answer. Like, I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah.
Let me get it for you, because they'll actually value that you're going to do something.
Yeah.
I think proving your value in some way is big, even on those initial phone calls. I think building some rapport is big on those initial phone calls. And some people can do it better than others. But at the end of the day, just pretend like you're kind of, I don't know, talking to a future friend or talking to like a future, right? You have like a little different sense when you're not coming across so salesy.
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to this young man. His name is Austin Glazer. He used to work at the company that I worked at previously, and he branched off and started his own agency,
Okay, good
and
for him.
he's crushing it,
That's fantastic.
absolutely crushing
Yeah,
it.
that's
He was
fantastic.
on the No Snooze podcast,
Okay.
and I listened in on it, and he said like, when I go out
Mhm.
and bring people that I want to do business with,
Yeah.
I do not talk business. I don't want
Right.
to talk. I don't want to talk insurance. I don't
Exactly.
want to talk real estate. I want to talk. I want to get to know you,
Let's get the relationship going first.
and
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that about him.
Right.
And I think that those are skills
Mhm.
that, again, those are learned skills.
Mhm. Yeah.
In my opinion, I believe those are learned skills through trial and error.
It's learned skills combined with your natural ability,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
It's that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want it for myself, because I think back, like, man, I often put myself into networking things. And I'm like, man,
Mhm.
I feel really awkward.
Oh,
Like,
I did. It happens to me too all the time. Social anxiety comes out of nowhere,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
When like
yeah. I don't
really,
know. It's like, man, I can talk to
yeah.
anybody.
And it's
I
funny
can,
because if I had like you standing next to me, I could talk to the whole room. But
yeah,
if I'm just by myself,
you're
yeah,
right,
I
right,
mean, it's
right, right.
just it's psyching yourself out in a way.
Yeah. So, what are some of your ways to connect with people? Like, what are some of your favorite ways to connect with people in general? What are some things you like doing?
Yeah, I mean, I love the events. I do
Mhm,
love that.
mhm.
I love just kind of bopping around and connecting with people I already know or being in environments that I'm already familiar with. I think
Yeah,
that's something that's big for me.
yeah.
Do you mean now when you're saying connecting with people, you just mean like in general, or do you mean like in the real estate side of it? Because to be honest,
Whatever,
I
doesn't
kind of
matter.
box it all together,
Yeah.
right? Because like I feel like no matter where I am, I could be at dinner with you know, a significant other, right?
Right, right.
And we could be at dinner or we could be at the waterfront in New London, right?
Yeah,
And we're talking to the people to the left and the people to the right. And
yeah.
next thing you know, you're building that relationship. And
That's
then,
right.
oh, you're a realtor. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
looking to buy an investment. Oh,
yeah,
well, here's my number. Oh, let me get you in some emails. Let me do,
yeah,
and it's kind of like that long term, it's almost like a soft sell approach. Like
yeah.
when you take the sales out of the sales job, that's
Mhm.
when you really start to crush it. I feel
Right,
like,
right.
right? When you
Yeah,
take the sales out of the sales job,
100%.
right? Like you go
100%.
back to the relationship,
Yep.
be you, do you, and kind of
Some of the most successful sales I've had are people are like, "Wait, you know, you don't need anything else from me?" Like, "No, we just
yeah.
had a casual conversation. I got
Yeah,
everything that
literally.
I needed from you."
Right.
And I
Right.
was able to, write your auto and homeowners
Yeah.
insurance. So,
Right.
um,
Right.
you had mentioned to me a few months back,
Mm.
and you actually mentioned in this conversation early on, we said, "I thank God for some of the stuff that," but let's talk about the spirituality
Yeah.
and whatnot, and how your spiritual beliefs, how do you bring your spiritual beliefs to your work
Hmm.
and your everyday life?
Hmm. Yeah. So for me, my journey with God has been basically my whole life, but there was definitely periods in my life where I was only praying to God when I like needed something or I was
Yeah,
like down and out, right?
yeah,
Or like, whining or like I need you,
yeah, 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 yeah,
right? But I think that specifically in the last like 6 to 8 months,
yeah.
I've kind of started growing that relationship a little further. And it's just something that brings me peace. Like I know about 6 months ago, there was a time period, life was happening,
Mhm,
right? And I was maybe some situations happened that were stressing me out or
mhm.
causing a little anxiety. And I think the first sense of relief I found was actually sitting in church.
Yeah.
And for me, that was huge, right? For me, that was kind of like it was almost like a moment you could like cry.
What do you remember most about that when you were in church?
Yeah, I remember sitting in church and actually my partner Chris Tremont, shout
Mhm,
out to him, he had been inviting me to church for like 2 years,
mhm.
maybe a year and a half,
Yeah,
and I would just be like, oh, I'll go next week,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, I'll go, me, and I went with him, and I think like they were doing the worship in the beginning, which is just like the band's
yeah,
playing
yeah. They
and
get the
the
little music
worship in the
going.
beginning,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think there was a point there where I was just having a lot of anxiety about something specific in my life, and
Mhm,
I mean, I went there and I actually felt like completely free,
mhm.
where like it lifted, and I felt like I could cry
Yeah.
because of the fact that I felt so relaxed. It was
Mhm,
almost like a feeling of home that I hadn't really felt in a while,
mhm.
if maybe ever, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it was just like this dramatic feeling of like home. And I just felt like comfortable.
yeah,
Like I don't think it was like anything like too like crazy but and
yeah,
intense. It was literally actually the opposite of intense. It was
yeah,
just
yeah,
like super comfortable,
yeah.
right? And I felt like just peaceful, and
That experience is, man. I
yeah.
love the my first experience with
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it was 2006,
Yeah.
2007. I was 16 or 17 years
Mhm.
old, and Rajay Davis actually brought me down to Miracle Temple Church, New London,
Oh, okay.
and same thing. And I was young, so
Mhm.
17 is a little different. Only 17,
Yeah,
man.
right.
Like,
Think you're
I'm
invincible?
barely thinking for myself.
Mhm.
Uh, But the way God works when
Mhm.
it comes to his people,
Mhm.
um, it's there's no words. There's
Yeah.
absolutely no words.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of moments in my life when it comes to the spiritual piece where you feel the weight being lifted off.
Yeah, right.
You feel. I had a weird thing happen to me.
What's that?
It was I want to say it was a couple weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and
Mhm.
I was really in a funky mood. Like, and
Yeah.
I get really
Yeah.
in
It's
those
called real
moods.
life, but yeah.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
certain days I'm like, some days I'm not feeling it.
Right.
And I sat down. I have a gospel playlist,
Yeah.
and with Apple playlist, you can put stuff
Mhm.
on shuffle,
Yeah.
and I have like 200 songs
Okay.
in this playlist,
Mhm.
and I said, God, I just need something like that. I just need to
You need a
know
little God wink.
little
Yeah,
God
give me a
wink.
God wink.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I just need to know.
Yeah.
Is there something like do you feel what I'm feeling? Obviously, he does. Do you hear me?
Right.
And if you do, this I don't like to tempt God. I'm the one that likes to tempt God. We're
Yeah.
not. It's
Right.
not
Like I don't
something.
believe you're real unless you show me right.
I don't.
Yeah.
That's not.
No.
I just needed to know
Yeah.
that
Not what he's saying. Right.
I don't need your physical. I don't need to see you right now.
Yeah.
I would love to. Right. I
Yeah.
would love
Right.
to. And I said, God, if you hear me,
Mhm.
this song from this playlist will play first.
Mhm.
And I hit shuffle.
Mhm.
And James,
Mhm.
the song came on.
Yeah.
It came on. And
Yeah.
I
I get a little
said,
chill. I got goosebumps. Yeah. Yeah.
I and I have so many songs. I'm
Yeah.
telling
Yeah.
you right
Right.
now, there's
Yeah.
a ton of songs. And
Right.
the
Statistically, that's
it
doesn't
wouldn't have
happen. Yeah.
happened.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, the probability is probably somewhere like 5,
Mhm.
6, 7%.
Right.
Not saying that it couldn't happen,
Right.
but the fact that it happened
Right.
right when I asked.
Right.
And it's in those moments that it makes me realize, if the Bible verse goes, if he be for me, who shall be against me?
Mhm.
Um, and
What does
so
that mean to you?
it means to me
Mhm.
that we have a ever loving God,
Mhm.
Almighty God,
Mhm.
all powerful God,
Yeah.
that in spite of anything that is happening to me, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you."
Yeah. Plans to prosper you. Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
And that's what that means to me.
Yeah.
That it was a reminder that he is there.
Yeah.
Might not feel like it. Well, maybe that's because uh, I'm disconnected too,
Yeah.
right? There's things
Sure.
that I'm doing in my life that's not as connected to.
Yeah. That's
But
normal though.
he, but
Yeah.
what you just asked me, what does it mean to me? Is that he said, "I'm still faithful,"
Right. Yeah.
and I appreciate learning about your spirituality,
Mm.
and I know this ended up being more me discussing the spiritual aspect a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm listening.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think everybody finds meaning and purpose in
Mhm.
different ways.
100%, man.
Um, you know,
100%.
I I just know I wouldn't be where I'm at today without God.
Yeah, right.
And one sitting here with you, I'm thankful
Yeah.
for, and
Yeah, for
having
sure.
that. So,
Likewise.
um,
Something real quick, right? You know
yeah,
that gratitude and anxiety come from the same
yes,
area of your brain,
yeah,
right? So it's actually impossible to be grateful and anxious at the exact same
correct,
moment, right? So
yeah,
if you can just stay there, and what's helped me is just remind myself, be grateful, be
yeah,
grateful, be grateful,
yeah,
because I have anxiety issues
yeah,
where I
yeah,
will
yeah,
work myself up for literally no reason,
yeah, yeah,
right? For literally no reason,
right,
right? Stay grateful, keep it simple, stupid, stay grateful. And I think that a lot of it is you can kind of navigate through the rest,
yeah.
right?
There's a book called "The Mountain Is You," and
Mm.
I believe that I can't remember.
That's so true for me. Mountains me.
Yeah,
It's not you. It's not you. It's not you. I'm not worried about any of you guys.
but it's to that point. What you
Yeah.
just said is um, the anxious portion of us and the gratitude
Yeah.
can't happen hand in
Can't happen at
hand.
the same time.
And I believe she
Try
says
it.
that
If
in
you
that
don't
book.
believe it, try it.
Yeah, yeah,
Literally.
yeah.
Try it.
That's it's a great sentiment,
Hmm.
or I guess it's not a sentiment, it's a fact, right?
Hmm.
Because one works in opposite and contrast of
Yeah.
the other. But yeah, man, I appreciate the conversation that we've had
Oh,
here.
of course, brother.
The one
Of
question I wanted
course.
to wrap up with,
Yeah, hit me.
what's the biggest piece of career advice you've ever had?
Yeah, surround yourself with positive people and surround yourself with people that you can learn something from,
Yeah,
right? If you're a new realtor, join a team,
yeah.
right? You gotta get the experience,
Join the
right?
alpha team.
Join the alpha team, or join any team,
Yeah,
sure. Do whatever you want, right? But I don't try to do it all on your own, and don't
yeah,
think you can do it all on your own,
yeah,
because you don't have to,
yeah,
right? I think that's a big thing.
yeah.
Right? So don't be, you know what? The only difference between people that know the answer and don't know the answer are the people that know the answer have the courage to ask the question.
Hmm.
And that's literally it.
Yeah.
And I think just stay grateful.
Yes, stay grateful. Love it. Where can people find you?
At James Corby Realtor on all socials, James Corby on Facebook, at James Corby Realtor, literally everywhere.
Awesome.
Google me.
Let's go. All right, bro. Listen, I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
my friend. I
Yeah,
appreciate you.
happy we get to finally do this the right
Awesome,
way.
man. Awesome.